Olá, tudo bem? Bem-vindo ao novo episódio do meu programa semanal que entra no ar no 247 todos os domingos às 4 horas da tarde. Hoje eu vou mostrar duas entrevistas em inglês, legendado em português, que são bastante relevantes à conjuntura brasileira. A primeira é com uma pessoa que eu admiro muito, Abby Martin. Abby Martin é uma das figuras na esquerda estadunidense anti-imperialista mais querida. Ela entrou no cenário nacional quando ela fez uma série de questionamentos sobre por que o governo estadunidense ignorou os avisos múltiplos do FBI que teria uma tentativa contra os Torres Gêmeos em 2001. E desde então a fama dela vem crescendo. Hoje ela é uma das pessoas mais populares nas mídias sociais dos Estados Unidos, da esquerda. E hoje eu vou mostrar dela uma entrevista com o economista marxista Richard Wolff. Eu mostrei uma entrevista que Richard Wolff fez com Michael Brooks recentemente, mas o Abby Martin, nesse programa, entrevista Richard Wolff sobre o conceito de marxismo cultural. Será que marxismo cultural existe? Pois o Marx nunca falou sobre o assunto. Quem falou sobre o assunto é o Steve Bannon, figura altamente racista da ultradireita internacional, que apoiou as campanhas de mídia social do clã Bolsonaro durante a época eleitoral ano passado, mas agora parece que está afastando, porque no fundo do fundo ele não gosta de latinos. E, então, numa forma oportunista, ajudou os objetivos dele uma vitória do Bolsonaro, mas ele não quer socializar com Eduardo Bolsonaro agora. Mas além do Bannon, o cara que mais popularizou esse conceito recentemente é um psicólogo, autor de livros autoajuda canadense, chamado Jordan Peterson, que debateu recentemente o Slavoj Zizek, num debate que foi muito decepcionante, porque Zizek não desafiou ele muito, né? E parece que cobrou $2.000 para entrar. Mas então, nessa entrevista do Abby, o Wolff desmente o marxismo cultural, porque de fato é uma coisa que não vem do Marx, vem dos nazistas, né? E não existe. Agora, quando você veja esses babacas entrando em escolas públicas e assediando o professor por causa do marxismo cultural, leva em consideração que ele está agindo através de uma ideologia nazista que vem da Alemanha da década de 1930. O segundo entrevista que vou mostrar também é bastante relevante para a conjuntura brasileira, pois é sobre Facebook. O Mark Zuckerberg, o dono do Facebook, foi obrigado a testemunhar no Congresso estadunidense recentemente. E a deputada Alessandra Ocasio-Cortez, que é novata, está virando uma das figuras mais populares na esquerda estadunidense, faz uma série de perguntas que obriga Zuckerberg a assumir que o Facebook planeja aceitar propagandas mentirosas dos políticos durante a próxima época eleitoral, durante a próxima campanha eleitoral. E como o diretor da campanha do Trump já falou que planeja gastar $1 bilhão só em propaganda de Facebook ano que vem, é bastante importante. Porque o Facebook parece que está favorecendo políticos da direita. Então, durante essa sessão no Congresso, o Cortez perguntou ao Zuckerberg o seguinte: se eu quero montar uma propaganda mentirosa dizendo que os líderes do Partido Republicano são todos medioambientalistas que apoiam o novo Acordo Verde, eu posso? E ele ficou lá gaguejando e um dia depois, um grupo de ativistas nerds da Califórnia realmente lançou uma propaganda mentirosa mostrando os líderes históricos do Partido Republicano como grandes apoiadores do meio ambiente e o líder do Senado republicano dos Estados Unidos dizendo que ele apoia o novo Acordo Verde do Ocasio-Cortez, que é um plano de desvincular o país do combustíveis fósseis. Né? E o que aconteceu? O Zuckerberg deixou a propaganda andar? Não, ele tirou. Né? Tirou. Então, na segunda reportagem que eu vou mostrar, é uma entrevista com o líder desse grupo de ativistas, feito pelo Mark Steiner, do The Real News. Espero que vocês gostem e um abraço para todos e todas de vocês.
So right-wing figures like Steve Bannon, Jordan Peterson, use this term cultural Marxism to describe the so-called moral rot of our society as kind of analogous to Marxism. So first talk about what you think cultural Marxism is in terms of how they're applying it and your response to this theory.
Well, the irony, and perhaps there's a deep meaning to it, the irony is that cultural Marxism is a derivative of a term called cultural Bolshevism, which meant basically the same thing. And this was invented by the Nazis in Germany as a way of organizing the German population to be critical of everything to the left of the Nazis. They were all either dupes of the communists that lay behind them, or wittingly doing their dirty work of spreading secretly and in the schools and in the films and in the museums this kind of evil Bolshevism. There's therefore some symbolic interest in the fact that Jordan Peterson or Steve Bannon would find in their minds the same phrase to play the same game, to argue that somehow insidiously the Democrats, liberals, everything left of where they are is somehow infected by a dangerous disease. It is hallucinatory, it's nutty, but it can serve as a way to organize people to be hateful towards those they disagree with.
And it doesn't actually have any application in Marxist theory.
No. Doesn't come out of Marxism. Marx never discussed anything like cultural Marxism. Marxists in general haven't. The closest Marxists came to something like that was to be interested in the role culture plays in shaping capitalism, because capitalism affects culture in various ways. We're doing a program on a cultural kind of way, but it's part of the economy of our society. So they were interested in the interplay between economics and culture, and so they would do that kind of analysis, but they never called it cultural Marxism. They talked about Marxism's interest in culture, but that's really the closest they came.
Mm-hmm. Seems like they're commenting on the identitarian aspect of how Democrats hijack identity politics to kind of sell the same ideas and institutions, and they're just kind of running scared of that.
Right. If you're afraid of the inclusion in our society of African Americans, Hispanic Americans, women, gay folks, and so forth, if all of that frightens you, which it does, then it's nice to have a term that says all of the things we don't like are secretly manipulated by Marxists. It's scaremongering of the crudest sort.
Well, I don't know if you saw Jordan Peterson's debate with Slavoj Žižek. I thought you should have been debating Jordan Peterson. I think you would have done a great job. Oh, I would love to see that.
Well, I actually did it a little bit. Let me tell you the story because you might enjoy it. A group of faculty and students at Boise State University in Boise, Idaho, about a year ago, sent me a bizarre invitation. Bizarre only in the sense I hadn't expected it. They were having a day-long conference, students and faculty at this university, devoted to the work of Jordan Peterson, who has a big influence out there in Idaho. And would I debate him, since he has said publicly that no Marxists would dare debate him? So I found this amusing. I have to admit, I didn't know who Jordan Peterson was at this moment, but I liked the idea of someone saying such a silly thing. And I said, of course I'll debate him. No, sight unseen, I will debate him, if we can work out the details. A few weeks later, they called me back and they said, we informed Mr. Peterson that you had accepted our invitation and we would have, as a featured part of this day, a debate between the two of you. Fine, I said. Oh, no, they said, not fine. He withdrew. So he was gone, but he so angered them by his acceptance and then withdrawal that they said, why don't you just come out here and analyze his work from a Marxist perspective. So I have, in this ersatz way, debated Mr. Peterson, and that forced me, of course, to read a little bit and see what he has said and done.
Well, we know how little he's actually read of Marx, so maybe that's what scared him. And in that debate with Slavoj Žižek, he talks about workers and bosses, and he actually says this, Richard. He says, quote, "Bosses would have to be stupid to exploit their workers." I mean, what is your response to that statement and how it kind of mischaracterizes Marx's theory of exploitation of labor?
It is so ignorant, which I'll explain in a moment, that it takes your breath away, because in that moment he reveals that he never read what Marxism has to say or what Marx wrote. Marx's great work is Capital, 3 volumes. First volume released 1867, so Peterson has had time to take a look at it. Right in the beginning, Marx explains what he means by exploitation. And it's a simple mathematical thing. If a worker, during the time he or she works, produces more value for the employer than the employer pays them in wages, that's all exploitation means. It has nothing to do with the common sense words, treating somebody nicely or not nicely, or in a crude way. So let me give it in a simple American example. If you go look for a job with a private employer and you discuss it and you get to the point of how much am I going to get paid, and they say to you, well, we're going to pay you $20 an hour, and you agree to that, you know in the back of your mind what Marx is saying here. You know that the employer will never pay you $20 an hour to do something unless during that time you produce more than $20 worth of extra value when it comes time to sell whatever you're helping to produce. Otherwise, there's nothing in it for the employer, and he's not going to do it because he's a nice guy. He's doing it to make money. So if he pays you the 20, you're worth more than that to him. And in that act, you're exploited. You're producing more than you're getting. It's a kind of moment, a eureka moment for young people when they discover this, either by reading Marx or by their own experience, because it confronts them with a stark reality. You are never going to get paid what you are worth, because this system is built on there being a difference between what you add by your labor and what you get paid for doing so. That's what every company is in the business to do. So Marx was saying it's a system that exploits. It's a system built on that difference. For Mr. Peterson to then say nobody would ever do that because it makes no sense, exposes a level of unfamiliarity, which, nobody has to know Marx, why not? But if you go around celebrating yourself as a critic of Marx and you haven't the most basic understanding, it's embarrassing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the premise of every worker-employer relationship.
It's as if I went into his field. He's a professor of psychology, by the way, in Toronto. If I went into his field and said something moronic about Freud's ideas, he would be in the same position as correcting me, but it would be an embarrassment of me. I wouldn't do that because it's kind of ridiculous and childish. But he gets such an audience reaction from knocking Marxism in trivial ways and never debating them the way he did with me, that he's never been brought up short by being exposed for the fakery that he projects.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of the same logic as just saying, CEOs would never pursue profits at the expense of the environment. That would be stupid.
That's right. Who wants to destroy the environment after 100 years of evidence to the contrary?
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
Well, another thing that he says, and this is the last thing I'll say about Jordan Peterson, another thing that he says is kind of justifying hierarchies, that hierarchies are biologically, they're natural, and that we should just accept them. What is your response when you hear this as used to justify the gross inequalities under global capitalism?
My reaction is to remind everybody of how slavery was justified. We were told in the American South and in other parts of the world where slavery existed that there was a natural, difference among people. White people were here culturally, and black people were down there. These were natural, these were historical. Whenever people in a dominant position get nervous about the security of their dominance, they like to anchor it, to make it something other than a convention among people and root it instead in nature, something that isn't going to change. Like the trees grow and the sun comes out, well, there are natural superiorities, and we happen to be the ones to tell you about it because we're sitting in the catbird seat at the top. For me, it is a sign of the danger of the status quo, feeling itself on shaky ground, having to lunge into some claim of nature making them the dominant player. Every group on top needs to naturalize. They can't stand that it's just a social convention because then it can be changed.
Right.
So it's nice to anchor it in something that is unchangeable. Human nature.
Human nature.
The minute you hear that, you should reach for your gun. The conversation has taken a bad turn.
You announced recently that the official policy of Facebook now allows politicians to pay to spread disinformation. Do you see a potential problem here with a complete lack of fact-checking on political advertisements?
Well, Congresswoman, I think lying is bad, and I think if you were to run an ad that had a lie, that would be bad.
So you won't take down lies, or you will take down lies? I think it's just a pretty simple yes or no.
In a democracy, I believe that people should be able to see for themselves what politicians that they may or may not vote for
So
are
you
saying.
won't take them down?
I don't want to be on her bad side. That was, of course, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez pushing Mark Zuckerberg over the false advertising that Facebook allows with no fact-checking by right-wing candidates. So let's start there. And hello and welcome to Real News. I'm Mark Steiner. Good to have you with us. And what did he say? I think he's the new king of doublespeak. Facebook cut a news deal with Breitbart. Breitbart, remember them? The news liars from the right. And now employees there are revolting at Facebook because Zook, as he's called by some, allows politicians to post ads that are clearly lies, and Trump folks are taking full advantage of that. So when AOC asked if she could run an ad full of lies, it inspired someone to post this ad on Facebook.
When Teddy Roosevelt became president, our land, forests, and wildlife had been exploited for more than 100 years. But the consequences of these lost resources had not yet dawned on the public conscience. President Teddy Roosevelt fired the imagination of the American people, shook our nation from its lethargy, and began to rescue the public domain.
Clean air and clean water, the wise use of our land, the protection of wildlife and natural beauty. These are part of the birthright of every American. To guarantee that birthright, we must act, and act decisively. It is literally now or never.
It breaks my heart to see that the conservative movement in America has really abandoned, a century of tradition of support for conservation of the environment.
I'm Senator Graham from South Carolina. I'm here to announce with my colleagues that we care about conservation. We care about the environment. From a Republican point of view, I think we need to look at the science, admit that climate change is real. Simply put, we believe in the Green New Deal.
This should not be a partisan issue.
I'm not a scientist, I have degrees to prove it, but I have really taken this issue to heart.
So who knew? I mean, this is a whole different Graham than any of us ever seen before. I kind of like this Graham. Might change my whole idea of what to do. I don't know. But let's welcome the man who did this ad that was taken down by Facebook. He's now running for governor of California. Adriel Hampton, welcome to Real News. Good to have you with us.
Hey, thank you, Mark. It's good to be here.
So, why did you tell those lies?
Well, during the hearing where Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez questioned Mark Zuckerberg, she laid out a scenario for an ad just like that one. And the interesting thing, is what happens when you really do it, right? So we have a political action committee called the Really Online Lefty League. And Wednesday night, after seeing that testimony, I got a flash of insight. And I thought, we need to make that ad and see what happens if we put it up on Facebook. So I contacted a friend who works with me, Mike Ramsey, who is the founder of something called the Institute for Progressive Memetics, and he's a very talented designer and obviously video editor. And we discussed the idea. I had thought about doing an image first. He said it's got to be a video. He cut that video for the Really Online Lefty League, and the next day, Thursday, we put it up. And I thought after this hearing, and Ocasio-Cortez said, could I run an ad saying that my the GOP candidates in the primaries support the Green New Deal? And I thought, Zuck would have sent a missive around to make sure that ad didn't get approved, but it did get approved. Facebook has a review process, and then if they get complaints or if media contact them, then they react. And that ad ran for about a day. Very little spend. The goal was never to intentionally deceive. It was to test the policies that are allowing a president whose campaign manager has run millions of Facebook ads, he claims to have, and he also is planning to spend $1 billion on Trump's reelect. That's on Facebook. That's enough money. Even a tenth of that is enough to sway an election, in my opinion. Depending on what other candidates are doing, but it's the exemption for falsehood is very big. Now, then Facebook took down our ad saying that it is a political action committee, not a politician. So then Mike Gravel, the former candidate for president, put it up on his page. They took it down again, this time saying it had been debunked on our page, so it couldn't be run subsequently on someone else's page. And then Facebook fact checkers also indicated to me that they might rule that Mike is a former politician, even though he's actively doing interviews and he's promoting his book and he's clearly a politician, but he's not in elected office or actively seeking elected office. So Monday morning I went and I filed to run for governor of California because I figured if you can launch a run for governor by attacking Trump, Mark Zuckerberg, and the biggest recipient of PG&E largesse in California politics, that's a pretty good way to kick it off.
And you did. So of course, in California, it doesn't cost anything to run for office.
It doesn't. Right? No, not when you declare. You have to pay a fee that's not inconsequential, much closer to the actual election in 2022. So yeah, just about anyone could go and file for office right now in California. You can't be a felon. And you have to sign your name on it. It's a one-page form. But I think in this case, the interesting thing is we have the technical acuity to keep doing these kind of ads. And we now have, myself, Mike Gravel, and one other federal candidate who are all of us will run these fake ads if we have to beat up at the system until we get politicians and right-wingers treated the same as everyone else. And I swear, Mark, if they don't change, it wouldn't take me very much money to defeat them, and I can explain why.
So you're running for California basically so you can undermine Facebook and tell a lot of lies about the other side.
I'm running for California governor because this issue, Ocasio-Cortez is doing a great job, it looks like, at the federal level, but she's not in House leadership. And you need someone like a governor or, a chair of a powerful committee in California or in Congress to, hold real hearings on this. We could hold hearings for months figuring out how in a democracy you police this kind of, false speech, disinformation, the audience targeting that Facebook allows that is really more powerful than anything ever invented. And that's the whole Cambridge Analytica scandal, right? And I'm very familiar with psychometric targeting. I have not run millions of Facebook ads, but I have run tens of thousands.
So speaking of Zuckerberg, I'm going to come back to this Cambridge Analytica thing and what happened to AOC. But this is Zuckerberg talking at Georgetown, I believe, in Washington, D.C. just a little bit ago.
In times of social tension, our impulse is often to pull back on free expression because we want the progress that comes from free expression, but we don't want the tension. Pulling back on free expression wasn't the answer, and in fact, it often ends up hurting the minority views that we seek to protect. We can either continue to stand for free expression, understanding its messiness, but believing that the long journey towards greater progress requires confronting ideas that challenge us. Or we can decide that the cost is simply too great. Yet still, a strict First Amendment standard might require us to allow things like terrorist propaganda or bullying people that almost everyone agrees that we should stop, and I certainly do. So once we're taking this content down, the question is, where do you draw the line?
Where do you draw the line? And he made it very clear. He was being questioned by Ocasio-Cortez. He sounded like a 12-year-old. I don't lie. I don't like lies. So what do you make of Mr. Zuckerberg in this?
Well, I heard the word free a lot of times from a man who runs a $531 billion advertising platform. So I find it to be incredibly disingenuous and, in fact, dishonest. And Mark Zuckerberg himself is dealing in gross misinformation. And, before we came on air, and I think in some of the slides here, I saw references to Popular Information, which is a newsletter that regularly talks about how Facebook is not enforcing its policies against Trump. And Facebook, I believe, explicitly clarified its policies to make sure that it was clear that it was okay for Trump to lie. They also use Tucker Carlson's Daily Caller as a fact-checking organization. I believe they created a foundation to be a fact-checker. Now, I've just refused my first Fox on-air interview and will continue to do so because these are the companies, Fox, Daily Caller, Daily Wire, Breitbart, that are really a part of the problem of gross right-wing propaganda. It's also interesting, you don't see the Real News being asked to provide a fact-checking crew. You don't see Occupy Democrats being asked to be a news source inside. They have, I think, a publication called Washington Times that's not highly regarded for truthfulness, but neither is Daily Caller. And then Daily Wire has 14 Facebook pages coordinating to boost its content on a daily basis, making it more popular on Facebook than CNN and New York Times on many days.
So, and tell me, this is tweet that AOC put out about Cambridge Analytica. And I just want to look, our viewers take a look at this a minute. Here's what we know, that Zuckerberg doesn't know when Facebook discovered the Cambridge Analytica scandal. That's hard to believe. After Zuck privately met with Trump and the far right, he's now allowing paid disinformation ads. He didn't tell the whole truth about his fact checkers. So that's what you were alluding to. So what do you think's afoot here when you have that and you have the Newswire and Ben Shapiro having all 14, 16, 17, whatever number of Facebook pages spewing out lies? He cut a deal with Breitbart, the right-wing news media. Is it all about money?
I want to smile, but I have to grimace through all of that. I think it's about money, and I think it's about power, right? Consider, I gave a scenario of, some like both independent and, very left organizations that could correlate to some of the organizations that are in power now with Facebook. And I guess the issue that we're hammering on is that right now it appears that Facebook either has a pure profit motive or it has the motive of kissing up to the administration, right? If you know that Trump is going to be really pissed off if you start censoring his content, or if you start, messing with the Daily Wire, then Facebook, they might do this stuff just to stay in Trump's good graces. And we've also seen that Mark Zuckerberg does not want Elizabeth Warren to be president because she's openly called for the breakup of Facebook. So we have the CEO of a company manipulating an election here. And, I'm challenging their standing to be the arbiter of truth on their platform. Who gave Mark Zuckerberg the right to decide what the First Amendment means?